you get a little bit of information that is extremely valuable from everybody. Everybody shares some thoughts with you. And when you're talking to a lot of people at the same time, obviously at the exact same time, that's obviously impossible.
I'm Julian Castle. Welcome to an episode of the Real Estate Investor Group podcast. Today I have Adam GOWER, and he's going to be sharing us today what he would do if he suddenly were to lose everything today. So Adam, thank you for joining us. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you, Julian. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So Adam, what would you do if you suddenly lost everything today?
Right. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make sure that I don't lose my audio. So let me just double check that's good. That's good.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. What would I do if I suddenly lost everything today? Gosh, that is an interesting question. I did think about this yesterday when we were chatting. What would I do? I would, I play the lottery, so I'd probably continue doing that. I don't know how much of exactly everything you consider is really everything. If really everything, and when I think of everything, I think you're talking about a family and home and money, and it's like if suddenly I had to start from scratch.
Yeah.
So the only way I can really contextualize this question actually is to spin back to a time when I really did have nothing, and actually had less than nothing. I was in debt. And had nothing. So if I'm allowed to do that to answer your question, what I would do is I would take bigger risks than I did take at the time. I remember this one time. You're welcome to interrupt me at any time, Julian. Whatever you want. But I remember this one time when I had nothing. I was working for $5 an hour, and I saw this little house. It wasn't so little. It was in downtown La Jolla, California. It's beautiful, beautiful location, one of the most pristine towns in the country, really, certainly in California. And it was this beautiful old house, and it was nestled in amongst office buildings and retail and who knows what, but it was the perfect location. Yeah. And I had the opportunity, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but I had the opportunity to rent the whole house. It was way more than I could possibly afford, but I also noticed that it had enough bedrooms that I could probably have rented out all the bedrooms separately, and not only not paid rent, but made a little bit of money along the way. And I bet that had I done that, I would have if I'd have taken that risk, which I didn't. I was too nervous. I had nothing, right? And so I didn't want to overstretch. I didn't want to go beyond my means. Yeah. And so I didn't do it. But when I think back, I wonder if I'd have done that, perhaps I would have got the bug and gone out and found another house that I could have rented and subleased, and then possibly purchased the house, this little house. Maybe the owner would have sold it to me at some point. And from there, I might have been able to build a portfolio that at the time, because I had nothing and I was risk averse, which I remain to this day, I didn't take the risk. And so I've always wondered, what life would have looked like if when I had nothing, I'd have taken bigger risks. That's my answer. I'm not sure what other people.
So got it. So you would do house hacking.
Well, that's a first step. I would have. So now you're asking me what I would do today. Today's very different. And it's a difficult question to answer, because when you say lose everything, what does that mean? That's a rhetorical question. What does that mean exactly?
So what that means is, like, you lose all your money, you lose your business, you go bankrupt, you still have the knowledge.
Yeah.
And let's say you have the knowledge, but not the relationships. So you have the knowledge of being able to create the relationships, and you have the knowledge of the business that you had, but you just have zero.
All
like
right.
in
So,
terms of financial.
okay. So I've been through this exact scenario. So I'll tell you exactly what I do when I have nothing but knowledge, and when I have no network, no, but I have knowledge, right? But nothing else. Like I'm starting from scratch. So I'll give you another example of how I did that. All right. So not today, but just to give you another example. So I landed in Tokyo. I was hired by a joint venture of Universal Studios and Paramount Studios
Mhm.
as I'm going to flash my Japanese abilities, Daihyo Torishimari Shacho, which basically means president of a division. So I had resources, but really they gave me a job, and my job was to build a network of real estate. Basically, it's to build real estate. At the time, it was multiplex movie theaters. I had to build movie theaters, but I didn't know anyone. I had no contacts. I knew nobody. I was landed in this job. It was very prestigious, but I had a secretary and an office and a budget, but nothing else, right? Basically nothing else. So this is what I did. I decided that I would accept every single meeting that anybody asked, anybody at all. Now, today I don't do this. I'm much more, what do you call it? Selective on who I spend time with. But at that time, and I was probably, how old was I? So I was about, mid-20s. I was only young. But I had this very prestigious position, but I didn't know anyone, but I did speak Japanese. So I decided that I would meet absolutely everybody. I didn't care who it was. So anybody that wanted to meet me, I took a meeting. It was all in person in those days. So I took a meeting. I went out of my way to meet people. I scoured the entire industry for everybody that was anybody of any kind of role, and I met everybody. And I remember, Julian, actually at the time, this is the old days when you collected business cards. Oh my goodness, I haven't used a business card for years. But I collected business cards. And in the first 3 months, I want to say, it sounds ridiculous, but I'm pretty sure I met something like 500 people. And by the end of that 3 months, I knew everybody. I had met absolutely everybody I needed to meet. And I was able to whittle down from that intense burst of activity, starting with nothing. I was able to, I knew who the key movers and shakers were, who were the most important people for me to focus my efforts on going forwards. And that's how I ended up building a massive real estate business in Japan, was through extremely rapid, intensive networking, all in person over a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So I would probably do the same thing today. I mean, I've done that multiple times, actually.
Gotcha.
Networking.
Okay, so you would start with your network and house hacking, and then currently, so tell us, tell the audience what you do now, and we want to go down the road of what you would do to get to where you are now.
All right, so I'll tell you what, so I'm just going to back up a little bit. I wouldn't do house hacking. I was just giving you an example of something that I did several hundred years ago when I was very young. But what I did do, so I've relocated, and I've done this again. So here's the other thing that I've done when I've had nothing and no contacts and know nothing about the town, or wanting to set up from absolute zero. So the most important thing is getting to know who all the players are. You've really got to elevate your visibility and get to know everybody. And so the way that I've done that as well is, it's no good knocking on people's doors and saying, "Hi, I'm new to the area. I'm new to the city. Can I come in and meet you?" Like, who the heck? Nobody's got the time for that. It's a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that I would do and have done is to find a deal. So when I can think of an exact example. So when I moved to the town that I'm in now, I went out looking for a deal to buy and to develop from the ground up. And I found one. It was a nice little, again, it was a downtown development site. I forget the numbers exactly. I could put a couple of hundred efficiency units on it. The city really needs housing. So I put this thing under contract. And then with that under contract, then I went and I spit. I hope nobody's listening because they'll twig if all the people that I met that time, I realized what I was really doing. But I really wanted to do this deal nevertheless. And so I contacted everybody. I contacted all the architects, all the engineers, all the general contractors, all the finance guys, all the plumbers, all the electricians, like absolutely everybody. And I said, I've got a deal downtown that I'm working on. I'd love to meet you, see what you can do. Right? How could you help me on this deal? Are you interested in working on this deal with me? And that way, I wasn't calling people with some kind of, airy fairy, whatever, hi, I'd like to meet you because I want to get to know people. Like nobody's going to take that call. But I actually brought something of value to them. And that's how I developed a network. Again, that was kind of similar to what I had in Japan because I had this job I had to fulfill. I was looking to do development deals, but that's what I did when I moved to the town I'm in now, was to have something that you bring to people of value, that is of value to them. And then they'll take the meeting and then you can really get to know somebody and they can get to know you. And through having done that, I actually established some very close, valuable contacts and some good leads that still to this day I'm close to and have good relationships with. But that wasn't your question. I just wanted to clarify the house hacking. So what was your second question now that I've clarified that?
That's great. So I think that's a great way to answer the question. You suddenly lose everything today, what would you do? So you would find a deal, and then you would get all the stakeholders involved, and then you would try to figure out this deal. So I want to preface one thing, and is how do you get the knowledge to do a deal?
Right. Well,
so
this deal that I was looking at here was, it was a big deal. It was, well, relatively big at the time. It was probably 25 to 30 million, like all in, right? So it was a ground up, whatever. I mean, it wasn't huge, but it was for this town, it was a decent sized deal.
Yeah.
But I came to that with a lot of knowledge, and I also came to it with the experience of knowing that in order to establish a network, you've really got to bring value. You can't just play with this kind of thing. You've got to bring value to people. So I knew I needed a deal, but your question is slightly different. So I'm trying to go back to where I tell you what, the truth of it, wing it. You got to wing it. It's like they say in Silicon Valley. It's like fake it until you make it. And also I have a PhD, right? So, but what I learned from the PhD, getting a PhD, was less the actual information that I gathered while I was writing this thing. It was less that. It was the process of being extremely thorough and systematic in the research that you do, leaving absolutely nothing untouched. So when you're researching something, is to take that research down to it's the source, right? What is how deep can you go on this particular topic and exhaust it completely, and then back out of that and research something else. And so, so I had another line of thought that I kind of lost, but that's how I have always figured things out. It can be really overwhelming if you don't know anything and you don't know anyone, and somebody ask you to do something. You kind of fake it, all right? Yes, I can do that. But if they buy into it and say, all right, I'll take you on, now you got to make sure you succeed. And so once you get somebody who buys into your story, if you have nothing, right? I'm not saying that, I'm like a total fraud or anything, because I'm not. But if you have nothing and somebody, gives you the opportunity to do something beyond your capabilities or beyond your experience and knowledge, You just got to explore. I'll tell you something else that I do, Julian.
Mhm.
So oftentimes I find myself in a situation where I need something really urgently, and I
Mhm.
got to figure out a solution really quickly. So
Mhm.
there are two ways to solve a problem. One way is to address that problem with one possible solution, bottom it out, and then if it works, great. And if it doesn't, then you move on to the next solution. That's one way. That's what I call the sequential solution, or the sequential problem solving method, where
Mhm.
you take, you just take it one step at a time. You like look at one idea, and then you look at a next, and then the next, until you find a winner. Or you can do the simultaneous solution method. And the simultaneous solution method is you hit all possibilities at the same time. That's what I do. So if I need a solution to a problem, instead of trying one thing and seeing if it works, and then trying the next and seeing if it works, I will hit every possibility simultaneously, work them all to the limits of, to discovering whether or not they're viable solutions. You know what happens every single time I do that? Before I know it, having had absolutely nothing and no hope right at the beginning, suddenly I find I have choice overload. Too many choices, because too many of those attempts that you make at finding a solution suddenly yield fruit. And so suddenly I find myself, oh my goodness, now my problem is, which of these am I going to pick?
Gotcha. Great. Okay, so you will do the simultaneous um problem solving so that you.
Yes, yeah, hit every possible way to solve a problem simultaneously, not sequentially. Do it everything you possibly can, all at the same time, until you have, and then you end up with multiple solutions, multiple options.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So now you would use this process to find the education that you need, like learn what you need to do, and then you would go out and find this deal, talk to all the stakeholders, and then you will do the deal. So what happens next?
Yeah. So here's the other thing about that. Yeah. Okay. I'm taking notes because I want to keep my thoughts all in track. So right. So what happens when you, let's say, for example, like spinning back to how I became embedded in the city here. So by meeting everybody, and this is actually something that is one of my strengths in the business that I'm in now,
Mhm.
is that by having conversations with experts across all asset classes and scale and whatever, across the country, different types of sponsors, etc. What happens is that you get a little bit of information that is extremely valuable from everybody. Everybody shares some thoughts with you.
Mhm.
And when you're talking to a lot of people at the same time, obviously at the exact same time, that's obviously impossible. But if you're busy enough that you're communicating with multiple people all at the same time, you end up having deeper insight into what's going on than anybody else, because no one else is communicating as much with as many people at the same time. Most people find themselves kind of siloed in their own world, hyper focused on solving their own problems, and they have a network around them of people that give insights, but those insights are specific to challenges that they have at any one time. When you're really broad and you're communicating to a lot of people simultaneously, you end up becoming a real expert in the field, because you gain nuggets of intelligence and knowledge and insight from multiple people. And that's how you kind of rise to the top. And I've seen that happen multiple times. Now, the other thing that happens, and this is to answer your question, which again, I've forgotten what it was, but I'm going to answer it anyway, because it's the right answer to whatever your question was. One thing leads to another. So when you find, let's say, back to this idea, all right, so what happens next? That's what your question was. All right, so problem one is, all right, I've got nothing. How am I going to move from nothing to something? So the best way to do that is networking. And the best way to network is to bring something of value. And in real estate, the best thing you can do to bring something of value is bring a deal, right? Here's a deal. Let's look at this together. Now, even if that deal never actually comes to fruition, and this one deal that I worked on here in town actually didn't, for various reasons, not to do with nothing to do with the amount of effort I put in. It was more to do with zoning and whatever else, political friction and whatever else, out of my control. But what happens is one thing leads to another. So somebody you meet on that pathway who is interested in the concept, but doesn't necessarily buy into that particular deal, may have, and almost certainly when you're dealing with enough people, there will be at least 2 or 3 people who have something else, who understand your passion, who respect the way that you've analyzed the deal, who understand that you have deep insight, right? Oh yeah, I spoke to this guy about the engineering, spoke to this guy about the architecture, I got these drawings put together, these sketches. You're putting together one conversation after another builds your credibility, because you keep adding. Each time you meet somebody, you've got more things you can talk about. And so what happens is it leads to something else. It always leads to something else. You never know what that path is going to be. And so, again, the answer to your original question, what would you do if you had nothing, is stay in motion. Don't stop. You've got to get into motion. You've got to have velocity and momentum. And that's how one thing leads to another. So your question, what next? Who knows what's next? You got to figure, right? Something will come down the pipe and you take that route, right? So for example, when I was here, somebody asked me, said, listen, I'm not interested in this deal, but I'm working on entitlement of, I forget what it was, a 200-acre whatever, some huge project. He said, I'd like you to manage that project for me. So of course, I then, oh no, I'm working on this deal. I really want to do this. I'm so far in, you'll have to pay me well.
Okay.
And so, boom, that's exactly what happened. And I ended up working for one of the top guys in town on this project. And I had no possible way of knowing that was what was going to happen. But by being in motion, by being busy with something of value to other people, it led to something else that I couldn't possibly have predicted.
That's amazing. Okay, so I love that answer. And to what are you doing now? What's the currently what's your business?
Yeah, so gosh, I mean, along this, okay. So I really should answer that in the context of what we've been talking about. So I'm going to do that.
Yes.
So at the very high level, what we do is we build digital marketing platforms. It sounds, if you don't know what digital marketing is, you're kind of lost, but digital marketing platforms for real estate sponsors so they can raise capital online, right? So we build crowdfunding platforms for seasoned real estate pros so that they can find more accredited investors and raise more money. All right, that's what we do. But we've been pivoting. And we've been pivoting for the last, probably not that much, actually, probably for the last 3 months or so. Because the market has taken a very significant turn. And the turn that the market has taken, of course, as everybody knows, is high interest rates have driven prices down, cap rates up, activity is down, investors are skittish, passive investors are skittish, sponsors are struggling with deals, banks are struggling. It's like the world has changed very, very rapidly, right? And so in the last, I know it's not 3 months, it seems like only 3 months, but I think it's been a bit longer. We've pivoted to exploring the possibility of actively investing in discounted distress deals. And candidly, I'm not sure where it's going to go. It's the same process. I'm applying the same process. The thesis is that there will be opportunity to buy discounted deals, and that there are plenty of people out there who need capital to buy deals that they're accessing, sponsors.
Mhm.
And the third pillar is that there are passive investors who want to invest in distressed deals. So I am simultaneously hitting all the network that I have, that passive investors say, hey, look, here's how you can invest in discounted distressed deals. In fact, I just published a new book. Here's how you can invest in these deals. And then I'm going to developers and I'm saying, hey, listen, have you got any access? Are you seeing any deals that you need to finance? And I'm getting more and more inbound emails from sponsors with good deal opportunities to raise capital for. But I haven't quite yet put all the dots together. I'm still working on that. It needs to coalesce somehow around something, probably a deal that is just, an amazing opportunity. That is what will catalyze the idea going forwards. But that's what I'm doing at the moment, basically.
Okay, that's great. All right. And so would you, if you were to suddenly lose everything, would you go back to doing this?
Oh, from what I'm doing now. Right. So I want to date stamp this as well. It's July 2023. Sorry to do that. The only reason I say that, if somebody listens to this in 3 months, I may have figured it all out. So don't think I'm still like scratching my head wondering how to make this thing work. Would I go back to do the same thing? No, but so you're asking kind of, when I think about when I had nothing, probably what I would do if I had to start again. And again, I think, all right, going back all the way to, when I was, a young lad trying to figure out what my life path was going to look like, I would have hyper focused on real estate. I got distracted along the way. I did get distracted a couple times. I set up a .com company in the early 2000s, and I did fairly well with it. But it was a diversion away from real estate investing. I've taken jobs, for others during my career that have been good, and I've learned a lot. I've had good mentors and champions in these companies, and I've done very well. Thank you very much. But I think if I was to go all the way back and truly start over again, I would never take a job. I would have been an entrepreneur from day one. But that's, again, speaks more to my natural aversion to risk. There's this balance, you see, Julian, especially when you work for an large institution like I did in Japan and then here again. There's this protective shield that the institution throws around you that is very comforting. It's a trade-off, right? You have, the institution is there, it protects you, it pays you, it feeds you, it looks after you. You got to do as it wants, right? And you are at its whim and request, or whatever. That's the wrong term, but you're at its beck and call. But it protects you. I think if I was to start over again, if I had to go back in my life to start again, I would not do that. I would take the risks, and I would be an entrepreneur, and I'd probably be in a very different place than I am today if I'd have done that.
Okay, great. Wonderful. And so now that we know that you would have been an entrepreneur now, and you're working on these things, which is, helping the sponsor and the passive investors and the deal come together and being like the connector for all of these three. What is something that you have a coaching program that, right?
Yeah, we do. We have a program for sponsors so that they can learn how to raise money online. That's what we have. Yeah,
that's great. So what is what's the path for someone that wants to go down that road of being a sponsor and raising money?
Okay. So just for clarification, typically our clients are multi-cycle, seasoned, large-scale sponsors. I think in total, I don't know. I mean, you can make these numbers up. I don't, but I think in total our clients manage over 35 billion of assets in total, right? So I mean, it's like, and the smallest maybe 100 million, and the biggest into the tens of billions, right? So a very broad range, but all multi-cycle seasoned sponsors. For somebody, I think your question is about somebody starting out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody starting out, you know, it's a good question because really, I don't know if you have kids. It's none of my business whether you do or not. But if you've got kids and you're trying to teach them not to cut themselves with a knife, or why broken, don't run with broken, or don't run with glass in case it breaks, or don't play with broken glass or something. You know what? There's no real way you can understand why that is good advice until you actually cut yourself, right? By accident, right? You're playing with a knife, or you break some glass and you try and pick it up and suddenly you cut yourself. You cannot understand. And so the hardest thing about commercial real estate is not really understanding how high risk it is and how easily you really can lose everything very quickly. Like overnight, you could suddenly go from being a multimillionaire in your head to losing everything, right? It's exactly your first question. So if you are starting out, I would recommend probably trying to get experience working for somebody who has multi-cycle experience, who you can learn from, and go and do some grunt work for a good sponsor who's been through it, and try and get your feet wet and experience working in all aspects of the business, both in terms of underwriting, working at an Excel spreadsheet, building one out on a deal, to working on the ground in renovations or upgrades. Try and get experience across the whole range of what it takes to be a successful sponsor by first working for somebody who has been through it before, that you can learn from. Because if you try and do it on your own, or you try and do it from a book, what you're not going to learn is how you can fail. And even if you do learn how you can fail from a book or from a course or something, you're not going to really understand that until you actually do fail. That was my experience of real estate, was building what I thought was a huge net worth in the 1980s, late 1980s, with ground up multifamily, only to see the economy tank and my net worth evaporate overnight. Went to nothing. Wasn't worth the paper it was written on, literally. So that was a hard awakening for me.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so definitely finding a mentor has the track record, who you can work, who can help you, by having him do work for you, and you learn in the process, so that you're at the point where you can then be a sponsor yourself and do your own thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then but then what might also happen is that you find that you grow with that mentor, right? With that sponsor. I worked for a shop in San Diego and they were on fire, right? And it's just going one thing from the next. And unfortunately, they collapsed when the savings and loan crisis hit, lost everything. I lost everything. And, the sponsors that I speak to today, some of our clients particularly, they had very different paths. Their paths were that they started in the business working for somebody, and that person was very, very successful, and they grew with that person, right? They grew. What happened to me was I hit a brick wall, unfortunately, when these guys went under, and I ended up going to Japan, and just went on a totally different 100%, like, it couldn't be, I don't know how many degrees different, but a totally different path. It was still real estate ultimately, but I was stalled out, and I had to start over again.
Gotcha.
And it slowed me down.
Okay. That makes total sense, and I think people are gonna value the answer that you gave, which is like definitely working with someone who can help you get to the goals of being in the industry the best way possible. So and what I want to talk about some things that some people might have questions about,
Okay.
and that is what kind of beliefs do you have to have when you're coming into a business like this?
You've got to have absolute confidence that you're going to succeed. And you cannot have doubts. You just got to have confidence in yourself, a belief in yourself. The other thing that you have to be able to do is to take the answer no 100 times before you get one yes. You just got to be able to plow through that.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be able to, I'm reading a book at the moment about failure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think of my missteps as being fails. I mean, I fail all the time. We try and test dozens and dozens of different ways of improving the systems that we built, and almost all of them fail.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always something out of that. Always comes something that is a home run, and
Yeah.
so we pick up those home runs and we double down on them. But you got to be prepared to trial and error. You got to test stuff. You got to try stuff. You got to try everything that you think might get you where you want, and be willing to accept that 99% of that effort is going to yield nothing. Right? You just got to realize that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, because when you get the win, the high is so incredible that that's what keeps you going.
Yeah.
Right? You just got to be able to persevere no matter how tough the going gets. And again, like I said before, stay in motion and believe in yourself and believe that you're going to succeed.
Yeah. That's great. And I want to also touch on something, which is the character traits.
Okay.
Um, what kind of sorry, the skills. I'm sorry, the skills.
That's
What
okay.
skills does someone need to develop, or can someone identify that they already have to be able to be a fit for this business?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's similar to kind of my answers that I've shared with you already, but perseverance. I mean, that's it. I'm not sure if it's. I mean, if you're talking about skills, I mean, there are some kind of rudimentary skills that you need. I mean, just kind of basic. You got to be able to use Excel. You got to be able to communicate well. So you need to understand how to write proper, like what I done. You've got to. That was a joke, by the way. You got to learn how to speak proper, like what I done. You got to be able to communicate effectively. And but you have some those basics, kind of rudimentary foundational skills. But on top of that, I think the most important thing is to have an inquisitive mind, to want to know every possible, to want to be thorough. I think you've got to be thorough when you in this business. You've got to be, if you're doing a development deal, or you're doing a renovation, or you're looking at a deal because you want to buy it and do some value add work, you can't afford to miss anything. Right? So you want to be really careful that you are looking at every possible line item on a cost analysis, right? Taxes, insurance, foundation work. What's it going to cost to do the renovation? Look at the roof. I mean, just from on a building perspective, but then the zoning laws. You've got to think about legal aspects of what you're doing. You've got to be really, really thorough and systematic with your processes to make sure that you don't miss anything. So you don't end up in a situation that you can't get out of, right? That you're stuck in and that you're going to lose money on.
Mhm.
The other thing I think is important is to be conservative. right? It's good to have high ambition and want to grow and want to grow fast and want to be wealthy and to, to have all these streams of passive income and blah, blah, whatever you learn about online. But you got to think long term. You've got to be prepared to, you got to understand that nothing really worthwhile comes easy, nor does it come quickly, right? You might get some quick results that give you the impression. It's like Vegas, it's like rolling the dice, like you win. So, oh, look how easy it is to do that. But the reality with real estate is that the market does cycle. There are black swan events. There are, market-driven events like we have at the moment with the Fed and interest rates. And did I say black swan? I already said that. Black swan event, like things that you can't imagine. And then there's just the natural cycle of the market. And the best way to manage all of those is to think and prepare long term, rather than thinking about how much you can make this year. Think about how much can I leave to my kids, right? What am I going to do that I can build net worth and value that is going to last beyond my lifespan? And if you can think that way, you'll be a lot more successful than if you're just trying to move very quickly and make as much money as you can today.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Long-term thinking. And so I want to touch on something which is, I think, very important. What is your long-term future? Like what is your long-term goal, you would say?
Well, I told you already, I play the lottery. So that, like, my retirement plan is the lottery. So if I hit, you know what? I actually carry around tickets. I do buy them. Every time I buy gas, I buy some more lottery tickets. I walk around, I don't check them for months at a time. And so one day, if ever I win, I realize, oh my goodness, I was walking around with $100 million in my pocket for the last 3 months. Good grief. But anyway, so that all joking aside, long-term plan is really to have, I still have huge ambition, Julia. I mean, I can't deny. I mean, I'm a lot older than you are. So I kind of vacillate between every time I step out. So I was thinking about this today. I was thinking that somebody might ask me, what's it like living in California, or on the beach in California, which is where I live? And I'll tell you something, one of the biggest downsides of living where I live in this staggeringly beautiful place with incredible weather, unbelievable air, peace and quiet, right, is it's tempting to do nothing. It's what's your long-term plan? Well, I want to sit comfortably and be able to breathe the fresh air and go on walks with my dog and everything. So I'm working really hard to do that. Yeah, but I've already got that. It's like, so what's next? So I think that I would like to have significantly, but then again, I have this desire. I just got back from London. I was in London, the city, not the country, right? So I was in London, the city, for a week on vacation with my family. And one of my real loves, actually, is stately homes in England. I mean, these places, these palaces are unbelievable places. And I've always wanted to own and live in one of those. Just kind of saunter around one of these places with so many rooms, nobody has a full count of them, and like living rooms that are just like multiple basketball courts, gymnasium size types of things with books to the walls and whatever, books to the ceilings. And I would love to have that kind of thing. So I'm torn between doing absolutely naff all, because I've already got an amazing life where I am, and being utterly driven to having mega wealth. So it's like I'm caught in this, in the crosshairs of decision, right? So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of where I am right now. But I'll tell you something. I couldn't really, much as I would like to, there's no way I could actually stop. There's no way I could just sit down and relax. I couldn't do that. I need to be active, busy, and productive at all times. So I suppose that's what my long-term plan is, to at least stop doing that before I croak. But maybe I won't be able
That's amazing.
to take a few days off,
What is that big and bit? Like, do you have a number on that?
No, I mean, look, these places in England, these beautiful homes, I don't know, they're tens of millions of dollars, and and then of course you want to have more than one. You got to have a country residence, you got to have a city residence, and and then you want one up in Scotland, and you want one on the beach. Like, it never ends.
Yeah.
This is one of the question. I'm not sure what it's really asking, but at the core of what you're asking is what makes you happy, right? What is happiness? Like, what is the ultimate goal? And if you can even get your head around the idea of happiness, I'll tell you an interesting book I read by a fellow called his first name Layard. I think anyway, Lord Layard or Lannard. He wrote a book called Happiness: Notes from a New Science.
Yeah.
And there was one study, and it basically analyzed all these studies. The whole thesis of the book was to provide guidance to governments, right? How do we elevate the average level of happiness in society through taxation and spending, right? So this was kind of where he was coming from.
Yeah.
But there was one non-scientific, I'm going to ask you a question. There was one non-scientific question that he or a study that was conducted at Harvard, non-scientific, that goes something like this. This is the way it goes. All right, Julian, you got two options. Option A, you can earn $100,000 a year. All right, let's just pick that number.
Yeah.
And everybody else earns 75,000. That's option one, right?
Okay.
Right, or call it $1 million, and they all earn 700. But let's go with 100,000. Everyone else earns 75. Option two, you can earn 150,000, right, with 50% more spending power than option one, but everybody else earns 200,000. Which option would you go with? One, where you have less but more than everybody else, or two, where you have more but less than everybody else?
Two.
Oh, you go with more but less than everybody else. Well, most people would prefer to have more than everybody else, right? I would rather be the rich guy on the block than the pauper on the block, irrespective.
Yeah.
And one of his findings was that wealthy, healthy countries have happiness quotients that are no higher than significantly less wealthy, less healthy countries. And you know why? Because what happens is when you're sitting there all happy with your life, you got a nice house, you got a nice car, you've got a good view. Suddenly, your neighbor pulls up in a new Ferrari. And you look and you think, oh, what? How did he get that?
Yeah.
I want one of those.
Yeah.
And so suddenly what happens is the more you have, the more you want. You start comparing yourself with everybody else. It's one of the curses of social media, is that you go on Face Chat or whatever, right? These social media platforms, and everybody else is doing so well, right? Yeah. They're all happy. They're all making money. They're all going on vacation. And I'm doing none of that. So you feel miserable about it. That's the biggest challenge, is being happy with what you have, being content with what you've got, not, constantly wanting more and more and more. That's a struggle. I think it's not just my struggle. It's certainly a struggle that I have. I just described it to you.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, ultimately, I've already got everything I aspire to have, but I still want more. I want the stately country home in in England somewhere.
Yeah.
And a beach house.
That's a beautiful thing to touch into. And so the right question would be the right answer would be the second option, right? That's the better option to pick. have more but less than everybody else, not have more than everybody else?
Well, I don't know. Is it really that? I mean, that's kind of the point, right? Is that if you have more than everybody else, then you feel, hey, you know what? I've got more than anyone else. I've got the car, I've got the house, I've
Yeah.
got all this. No one else is like that. But if you've got all of that and some more, but everybody else has got bigger houses, bigger cars, go on more vacations, right? Their kids go to better schools, you know, you start wondering, well, what's wrong with my life, right? Why don't I have all that stuff?
Well, let me tell you my answer. When I have more than everybody else, then I'm at an advantage and I can provide for other people because I'm at a surplus than the average. Now, when I have more than what I did in the first scenario, but I have less than everybody else, which means that people can provide to me because they have a surplus. And
You're hoping they'll give you their cash, will you?
and because we're a community, we're all better together because we're wealthier.
Well, you're going to have to, that's a strong case to make to your neighbors. Hey, can I drive your car on weekends, please? Because I don't have one, but you do. But I like the idea, actually, of the first option. I mean, you really touch on something very profound, actually.
Mm-hmm.
The first option, you chose the second. I want more, even if it's less than others. But
Yeah.
now you just mentioned, okay, if I have more than anybody else, that means I can give to others. And one of the most satisfying aspects of my life is the ability to be able to give. I mean, I probably I know that I don't know, I shouldn't be indiscreet, but you know, we work with a lot of freelancers, and at the end of the year, I always provide what I hope they think are substantial bonuses, right? That relate to how much work they've done for me during the year, and just really express my gratitude. It's kind of like a profit sharing. It's
Mm-hmm.
entirely discretionary. Nobody expects it, except I've been doing it so long now. I know that everybody does expect it, unfortunately. So I can never escape it now. But it does give me the greatest satisfaction that I get is providing for others, frankly, and being able to make life better for other people, to you know, solve problems for them. One of my team suddenly told me, oh yeah, I'm rendering this video and it's taking hours. And so, how old's your computer? I couldn't believe it. Right, let's just go out and buy a new computer now. I'll pay for it. Let's solve that problem immediately.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, it builds a better relationship, and it feels good to do that. I don't miss the money ever. I mean, I suppose if I had it all in a bank account, watched it, you know, sitting there, I'd probably think, oh yeah, good, you know, it's better in my pocket than somebody else's. I don't know, because I don't know how much it is. But it's a substantial amount, and the amount of money I give to charity every year. So but those are the things that that's the first part. That's the point that you kind of make, right? If I have more than anyone else,
Yeah.
I can give to those people, and that is one of the most satisfying emotions that you can have. If you know, if I don't know, I mean, to me,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
I.
Yeah, I believe you in that. And that's amazing. Adam, I think this has been a great conversation and people have gotten a lot of valuable information from it. If people want to learn more about you, where can they check you out?
Right. So go to my website, gowercrowd.com, GOWER crowd.com. And I have a newsletter goes out every Wednesday. It's free. It covers the world of real estate syndication and crowdfunding. It's geared to both passive investors and to sponsors raising capital. It's information packed, and that's how you can reach me. As soon as you get one of those, if you want to talk to me, just hit reply and I will be there.
Amazing, amazing. So I invite everybody to go to gowercrowd.com and visit Adam and check out his newsletter. And if you enjoyed this, please reach out to Adam and say thank you for sharing. And I really, would like to have Adam on in the future. So I think this has been a great conversation. So thank
Julian,
you.
you are a great host. You're a lot of fun. You've got good energy and a good smile. It's been a real pleasure being on your show. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Adam. All right, Adam. So have a good day.